Good morning, good afternoon, and/or good evening. No matter what time of day you are tuning in to hear this speech, I would like to ask you a question. Have you ever heard about learning disabilities? In fact, have you ever tried to communicate with someone with learning disabilities? I happen to be lucky enough to have two learning disabilities. Do not count on me to run a spelling bee because my dyslexia will be in the way. I like to say I'm a phenomenal person to have a great conversation with if you're prepared for my attention deficit disorder, also known as ADD, to change the topic 20 times in a 20-minute conversation. For me, I have the words in my mind, but it is difficult to communicate when I am understanding and or feeling in writing. There are different ways of communicating that need to be projected to those with learning disabilities. Appropriate communication techniques, emotional support, interaction with learning disabled, in other words, what not to say and what to do. According to the Gale Encyclopedia of Science, learning is defined as the alteration of behavior as a result of experience. When it comes to talking to someone with learning disabilities, it is necessary to try to know the appropriate communication techniques. Organizations like MedCap provide tools and guidelines to communicate with learning disabled individuals. Through personal experience, I find that a good communicator uses attainable language, they avoid using hard words, in other words, they speak clearly, not slowly. There is no need to scream, and patience is greatly appreciated. Eye contact is very important when communicating with someone with learning disabilities. Speak to the person first. When the communicator is more relaxed, it is better for both parties will feel. Body language is also important. The use of gestures and facial expressions say a lot about the emotions. Also, it is important to be flexible. Find the right environment and use the appropriate time and place in order to get the individual's full attention. When it comes to time, individuals with learning disabilities benefit with additional time so that they could turn their thoughts into words. As I stated before, patience is always welcome. Distractions could easily interfere even during the simplest conversations. Excessive noise and bright lights can be very distracting. Many times, a quiet environment provides an opportunity where a student could better focus. Breaking large tasks into smaller steps have been also very helpful. I find it helpful that when the information is presented visually and verbally, it's key for a good understanding of the material. Now, addressing the emotional state of mind with a learning disabled individual is important. This is where good listening skills come to play. In 1986, the New York Times published the articles Heroes Helping the Learning Disabled. In the article, the students talked about the importance of learning disabilities and the emotional struggles. Many times, one could feel rejection and leads to frustration and low self-esteem. Being able to say what we feel clearly is very important for our emotional well-being. Many times, it is hard to find the right words, but when we have a good listener, we could open up. Hearing the simple words, "How could I help?" are so welcome and appreciated. Just like anybody else, sometimes we need somebody to listen to us. Kind words go a long way. When interacting with a learning disabled individual, it is important to realize that they just learn differently. We are wired differently. I would like to highlight on the fact that we are not stupid. We do not like hearing words like, "You don't look like you have a disability. Are you sure you're not just using that as a crutch?" I find this very insulting. One thing is for sure, threats do not work for us learning disabled folks. A person with learning disabilities can make his or her own decisions. Again, I would like to emphasize on the fact that we are not stupid. In fact, I would just like to add that we just do not fit in the one-size-fits-all educational system. The National Center on Disabilities and Journalism recommends attainable language regarding disabilities. However, these are some of the ones to avoid: insane, crazy, dumb, defective, loony, mentally retarded, and many, many more that are just not acceptable. I would like to put emphasis on the fact that people with learning disabilities are not dumb, that we just happen to approach learning differently. We have to acknowledge that there are different ways of communicating that need to be projected to those learning disabled. We discussed that there are appropriate communication techniques. The emotional support for the student that is struggling is a must to get a point across. Most importantly, we discussed the do's and don'ts when communicating with an individual with learning disabilities. Let me leave you with my favorite quote. In fact, it was my senior quote. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.